Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So I am Celito Arlegue from the Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats, or CALD. So I am joining you from Manila. So CALD, for those of you who may not be aware, is a regional network of political parties in Asia. So welcome to this launch of the recently concluded research done by Future Forum and CALD, entitled Cambodian Commune and National Elections, Insights and Lessons. So this coming Sunday, June 5, Cambodia will be holding its Commune and Sangkat Council elections, with about 9.2 million registered voters choosing from over 80,000 candidates from 17 political parties in 1,652 communes all over the country. There are still serious doubts on whether the elections will be free, fair, credible, transparent, and inclusive. But the upcoming electoral exercise is turning out to be the most competitive since the political crackdown in 2017, which turned Cambodia into a de facto one-party state. The June 5 commune elections could be a preview as well of the Cambodian general elections next year, with significant implications for the future of democracy in the country. It was for this reason that CALD partnered with Future Forum, an independent think tank in Cambodia, to analyze the issues and concerns in the run-up to the 2022 Commune and 2023 general elections. More specifically, we wanted to know the perspectives and sentiment of the Cambodian voters in relation to the upcoming election cycle. To tell us more about this research, please allow me to introduce the Director of Research of Future Forum, Dr. Michael Renfrew, who is joining us from the United Kingdom. So Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lito. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you in advance for your attendance and taking part in today's live stream. We're very excited to present the findings of this research output. My colleague Catherine Reid will be up next to talk you through them. For those of you who don't know us, at Future Forum, we're the only independent public policy think tank operating out of Cambodia. Our main approach is to engender critical public policy debate and dialogue to empower young Cambodians to be future leaders and be fully more engaged in their day-to-day engagements, whether this is through work or through politics, through general engagement. We're absolutely delighted to have partnered with CALD on this project. For us, we feel like there is a lack of perhaps open and critical analysis that involves pulling together all stakeholders involved in the process. And we felt that this was a fantastic opportunity to collect the insights of young, educated Cambodians, to provide them an opportunity to voice their concerns, voice their hope, voice possibility for the future, and then most importantly, to try and offer some form of pathway forward. So we're very excited for you to read the report, to be part of today's engagement, and we welcome feedback, questions, and subsequent dialogue on this from all stakeholders. So we very much look forward to hearing from you. So without further ado, I think I'll be passing over to Catherine.
Well, thank you, Mike. Please allow me again to express our appreciation to you and your team for partnering with us for this research project. So before we continue, let me just inform our participants, particularly those who are joining us from FB and also some participants that we have on Zoom, that you may post your questions or clarifications in the chat box, or you may post it in the messenger, in the FB messenger, so that we can address them later. Okay, So we shall now proceed to the most exciting part of the lunch today, which is the presentation of the key findings of the report. So I believe a number of people from Future Forum research team contributed to this research. But for this afternoon, we will be joined by Catherine Reed. And Catherine is a PhD candidate in the University of Delaware, doing a dissertation entitled The Regional Spoiler, Mismanaging Cambodia's Relations and Territorial Conflict in Mainland Southeast Asia. She is also a Fulbright Cambodia researcher and fellow at the Center for Khmer Studies. Joining us from Korong Samloem, I hope I pronounced it correctly, most likely not, but it is off the coast of Sihanoukville. Catherine, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to discuss the findings of the Knowledge Toolkit on Cambodia. So I'm Catherine, obviously. I've already been introduced, so I will just go ahead. So I'm going to be presenting the main findings of our study on the upcoming commune and national level elections in Cambodia. So let me briefly just begin by explaining the methodology of the study. So it was threefold. First, we gathered data on the contesting parties and the electoral process from a desk review of English language reports and news articles. Second, we conducted 4 in-depth interviews with Cambodian experts knowledgeable about the upcoming elections. And lastly, we held 2 focus group discussions with 20 young educated Cambodians in Phnom Penh. The study took place during April, prior to the official campaign period, which began almost 2 weeks ago. So my parents are currently visiting me in Cambodia, and I've had the chance to witness the campaigns over the last 2 weeks as I've been traveling with my parents a bit throughout Cambodia. So it's been very exciting to see all of the campaign posters and everybody going around campaigning. So given that 2/3 of Cambodians are under the age of 30, it's especially important to make sense of their policy interests and perspectives on the upcoming commune and national elections. So for this reason, I'm going to be focusing on the results from the focus groups after I provide a short overview of the contesting political parties in the commune elections that are taking place this weekend on Sunday. So while there are 17 political parties competing in the 22 commune elections, there are 4 political parties competing in all 25 provinces. These are the ruling government's Cambodian People's Party, the Candlelight Party, Phun Sin Pek, and the Khmer National United Party. Out of these 4 parties, the CPP is competing in all communes, and the Candlelight Party is contesting in almost all of the communes as well. Out of the registered candidates, 31% of the candidates are women, which is a slight increase from the commune elections in 2017. Moreover, it is important to note that several of the competing political parties were formed in the wake of the legal dissolution of the Cambodian National Rescue Party in late 2017. So notably, the interviewed experts for the study view the fact that the Candlelight Party is competing alongside the CPP in almost all of the communes as a positive development for the electoral process in Cambodia. The experts identified several priorities for national policy in the upcoming commune and national elections. So these include focusing on the COVID-19 economic recovery, job creation, social protection for the poor as well as the elderly, youth employment, improving access to public services and agricultural markets, strengthening law enforcement, promoting technology, eradicating corruption, as well as fostering social justice. Now turning to the perspectives of the educated youth in Cambodia, the majority of the participants of the focus groups said that they plan to return home to their local communes to vote in the local elections this upcoming weekend. Their reasoning for returning home, they had several different reasons. So amongst them were to exercise their rights as first-time voters, to experience the voting process itself, to vote for smaller parties, as well as to vote for local candidates who they are familiar with in their local communes. While both the local and the national elections are viewed as important by the young educated Cambodians that participated in our focus groups, it was emphasized that the commune elections could have a more direct impact on the livelihoods of Cambodians due to the process of decentralization in Cambodia. So the participants of the focus groups identified a number of priorities for national policy across several different policy areas. In terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, young Cambodians would like to see the government prioritize economic recovery in terms of enhancing economic growth and domestic production and containment measures for COVID-19. For land rights, the participants noted that more attention should be paid to issues related to land concessions and resettlement. In the agricultural sector, the focus group participants highlighted that water irrigation in their local villages and market access for farmers needs to be prioritized. Addressing labor rights through increasing the wages of factory workers, for example, was also mentioned as a priority area for national policy in the upcoming elections. Given the high price of housing and living in Phnom Penh, sustainable development as well as affordable housing were identified as priorities for young educated Cambodians. Fostering inclusive national policies that consider gender equality as well as the rights of minority groups was additionally identified as important for national policy by the experts that were interviewed for the study. By the focus group participants. So since this directly affects their personal livelihoods and that of their families and friends, the young educated Cambodians in the focus groups were especially interested in discussing their perspectives on the priorities for local policy at the commune level. So the participants covered around 8 local policy areas. These included infrastructure, agriculture, public services, public space, rule of law, communication, corruption, and climate change. Much of the discussion focused on improving infrastructure and public services in their local communities for the upcoming local and national elections. So for example, young Cambodians mentioned the need for road and sewage type constructions in their villages, building streetlights, as well as access to water in the dry season and water drainage system for the rainy season. And in addition, also waste management within their local communities. In terms of public services, they identified access to healthcare, education at the high school level especially, the provision of birth certificates, and improved traffic control in their local communities as priorities. Village safety and addressing drugs in schools are mentioned as priorities for the rule of law. Additionally, publicly disseminating information on the roles and responsibilities of local authorities and the budget of communes are viewed as central local policy priorities. To combat climate change, communes should focus on actions such as planting trees. This was also something that the focus groups were very adamant about. So I'm going to just conclude with a few words on the perspectives of young Cambodians on civic participation. So the focus group participants emphasized that elections are important because it allows citizens to participate in politics. Allowing citizens to elect their representatives ensures that different perspectives are represented in the communal councils as well as in the National Assembly. This in turn encourages public debate on local and national policies and laws. Holding elections spurs competition and ensures that elected officials at least need to be more aware of their actions. All right, so that's the main findings of our study. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So there is a lot to unpack in the research, particularly on how voters' concerns will shape the outcome of the upcoming commune and, of course, the general elections next year, and how political parties, which is of our interest, particularly those belonging to the opposition, can adjust their electoral strategies, their platforms accordingly in relation to these issues. So again, if you have questions or clarifications, you may post them in the chat box or on FB Messenger, depending on where you are watching us. But now we have a political party representative who will share his thoughts on the research. Please allow me to introduce him first before I give him the floor. So the discussant is the treasurer of the Candlelight Party, which has emerged as the biggest challenger to the dominance of the Cambodian People's Party in the upcoming commune elections. So the discussant is also a former senator in Cambodia, where he served as secretary of the Anti-Corruption Commission. More importantly, he is a good friend of many of us in the CALT network. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to introduce Mardi Seng. So Mardi, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this presentations of the finding. And it's very interesting to hear the first speaker presenting the finding. And we are pleasantly surprised, after 5 years of non-participatory democratic, if you can call it democratic process, that one political party control everything. And now it's very interesting to find that the people are actually, especially young people, are actually looking forward to participate in this democratic process through the election. And this is exactly the reason why, after 5 years of waiting and watching the whole political environment in Cambodia, is one of the main reasons why we decided strategically to come back and participate in this local election. As you know, the Cambodian Constitution, it promote the multi-party liberal democratic process. And because the Candlelight Party is a legal entity in Cambodia, we have to comply by this. We have to respect the constitutions and comply by certain law and regulations in Cambodia. So that is one of the reasons why and also because we are a democratic party which believe in peaceful process of change through elections. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to participate in this election. And after reading the findings, we share some common share some common goals or objective or concerns of the people. And I think we believe that by participating, by having representations at the local level, we will be able to represent a group of people in that have not been represented in the last 5 years. So we are looking forward to participate. We are hopeful that we will do well, even though we understand that this politically charged process and election process is the playing field is very lopsided, but at the same time, I think we fairly believe that we have more than enough people at the grassroots level, at the voters will support us, because we have a long history of fighting and demanding and protecting their rights. And so we are really looking forward to it. And instead of saying more, and I think it's probably best to open the floor to other people so they can ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marty. So very interesting points in your presentation. And we are also looking forward to the prospects for the Candlelight Party this coming commune election. So we wish you and your party well this coming Sunday. So I see that there are some questions already in the chat box, but before we go into them, I have some questions for both Catherine and Marty, and also maybe Michael can also contribute, being the head of the research team. So to Michael and Catherine, for this research, you interviewed primarily young, educated Cambodians in Phnom Penh. So to what extent do these views of educated, urban, young Cambodians reflect the broader Cambodian population? Although I also take note of what Catherine said a while ago, that 2/3 of the Cambodian voters are age 30 years old and below, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much, Marty, for participating today as well. It's crucial to hear from alternative political parties in this discussion, particularly one as vibrant as the Candlelight Party. In terms of representation, I think we're getting a sense that voters are looking at what matters to them in their day-to-day. It's not just party politics and personality politics, but rather how coalitions and progress can be formed amongst politicians in a way that supports and sustains development and progress. As Catherine's noted, in terms of the concentration of young Cambodians, it's a very important subject group, I should say, to get insights from. But these are also likely to be the individuals that in the future are looking to step into politics in a meaningful way. So I think when you look at those in their mid-20s, it's really important to understand what matters to them today, and then to have a discussion that is open to the wider Cambodian community to see how that rings true with those in different socioeconomic backgrounds.
And if I could just add, I think some of the, for the focus groups, why they are all based in Phnom Penh, the students, they all come from different communes in Cambodia. They come from around Cambodia. So I think it's at least fairly representative in terms of the concerns that different perhaps communes and groups of people are facing in different parts of the country. And as we were having the discussions, they also bring in kind of very local, very specific issues facing their specific area of the country. For example, with flooding, things like that.
Thank you so much, Michael and Catherine. And I think you raise a very important point, that these people would most likely enter politics in the future, and they would be the key decision makers. So it's also important to know what are their priorities at the moment. I have a question for Marty. So Marty, some members of the political opposition called the decision of the Candlelight Party as a step backwards because they say that your participation in the elections may end up legitimizing the process and consequently giving credibility to the government of consent. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, we heard a lot about this. As I mentioned earlier, it was a strategic decision to participate because we believe in democracy. And what is democracy? Democracy is a process that we believe in elections. That's how people elect their leaders. And if we say we are Democrats and don't participate in election, what kind of Democrats would we be? And right now, what choice do we have? We believe in peaceful peaceful ways of change. And so I just don't see any alternative. And not legitimize, what choice do we have? We live in a country with certain rules or law, and even though we don't agree with all those existing rules and law and processes that are so lopsided, but at the same time, if we decide we choose to engage. If we don't engage, we just wait for what? And as I mentioned earlier, is what is our alternative? We have no other alternative. Either wait or engage in the election process. So we have no choice.
Thank you so much, Mardi, for sharing your thoughts on that. Well, I asked because it has always been a debate among the members of the opposition. Whenever elections are held in a less democratic systems, I mean, whether to participate or not, you know? And I think you raise a very important point there that if you don't participate, then what's your alternative? No, I mean, you're going to wait, but wait for what? So I think that's also important to bear in mind, no, in strategizing the next steps of the political.
I just remember one other thing. Even though, in previous elections, the Sam Rainsy party participated in the first election was 1998, and the playing field was not level. We knew the election was not free and fair, but we chose to participate. And each election, as we go along, we gain seats all the time, to a point in 2013, to the point that the ruling party was so fearful of us winning. In 2017, they dissolved the CNRP. So, and now we're starting from point zero, and I compare the Candlelight Party to a landscape that is scorched, barren, and Candlelight Party is the only seat right now. At this point, is the only legitimate seed, good seed that must be planted by the voters on Sunday, and it is our duty, our responsibility to tend and care for this seed of democracy, and it's gonna take time to grow it. It's gonna take it will require tender and caring for it. So, and also it's also required for the diplomatic community, for international community, for civil society to participate in protecting this seed, that will grow, and I believe it will grow. Even though the ruling party knows that this seed will grow. That's why there's, in many ways, they are so afraid or fearful of this the Candlelight Party that they're taking measures to minimize or to prevent us from growing. So I think it's a process, it's a long process, and it will grow. Democracy will come back.
Thank you, Marty. It just reminded me of another issue. There are analysis saying that the Candlelight Party can also be a victim of its own success. So meaning if you win big this coming Sunday, that could also be used as a signal of the incumbent government to also dissolve you, similar to what happened to the Cambodian National Rescue Party in the past. So what are your thoughts on that?
The election is the opportunity for the people to express their will, and the people will express their will. We will be the beneficiary of that will, and it is beyond our control. It's not we don't control what the government will do to us, but at the same time, it doesn't mean the people shouldn't express their will, shouldn't offer the opportunity for us to serve them. And in previous elections, the opposition leaders were very well-known politicians. They had big names, name recognitions, and all that. And it turned into a political personality politics. For us now, we have no big names. It's just a grassroots movement. You know, like the Philippines people movement. So for us, I think if the CPP, if the ruling party want to dissolve this the Candlelight Party, like they dissolved the CNRP, I think then it's no longer the ruling party against Hun Sen against Sam Rainsy, which is a personality politics. Now it's going to be the ruling party against the people. So and I think the people will not be happy about that.
Thank you, Marty. So I think my key takeaway from what you said is every election is an opportunity to expand the democratic space. And thank you so much for sharing that perspective. So I have a question for Michael and Catherine, but maybe Marty can also share his thoughts. From your perspective, Michael and Catherine, to what extent the results of the upcoming elections this Sunday would shape the general elections next year? And then what could be done by the democratic forces, political parties, media, civil society, to push the democratic boundaries even further after the commune elections so that we can have a more competitive general elections next year?
So, excellent question. I think that it's quite difficult to read into how the commune elections will affect the national elections. In the previous sets, we've seen commune elections run incredibly smoothly and lead to general elections that have run less than smoothly. But I think the main, from our side, our main insight would be pushing towards institutional development and engagement with public policy, engagement with topics of change. In terms of this notion of pushing democratic engagement through political parties, moving away from personality politics and moving towards development around substance, the topics that matter for the electorate, engaging the electorate. So part of what we've looked at through this research is the idea of developing manifestos, party engagement around key voter topics. I think from our side, that's one of the most crucial mechanisms to determine long-term sustainable engagement, because 1 year of progress may not lead to sustainability, But similarly, 1 year of regression doesn't mean that the whole system is in jeopardy. So we're looking to engage with those materials that allow long-term engagement from the electorate. That would be our perspective. Catherine may have other elements to add in.
Yes, I would agree with everything that Mike said, as well, especially because this movement away from kind of more personalized politics towards trying to kind of have a more, I think, comprehensive understanding of the issues that voters are actually caring about. This is something that in the focus groups, that was the first thing a lot of them talked about, was that right now politics is a bit, the campaigns are very personalized. And I know that we did the study in April and the campaign period just started 2 weeks ago, but even in that period, a lot of them didn't really know the main issues, aside from the big parties, where they already knew some of the main issues that they cared about. But for a lot of the smaller parties, they don't really know what kind of change they want to enact and how they can help the local people. So I think a lot of the discussions and a lot of what I presented, as well as the local priorities especially, are long-term priorities, I think, that they want to see political parties address, and that through whoever gets elected in the commune elections as well as the general elections, they hope that the fact that there is some kind of, there are different parties competing and there's a discussion and a debate around these local and national policy issues, that's very important to them. Just the fact that there are parties competing and they have to take the concerns of voters into account as they are competing. And that seems to be one of the main, I think, things that they care.
Yeah, thank you, Michael and Catherine. And I think it's really important to note that the issues that were raised in the focus group discussions really transcend this election cycle. As what you said, Catherine, they are long-term issues, and this information could provide the basis for the shaping of party platforms and programs in the coming years to come. So now we are opening the floor for questions from the chat box. And I think there's one question here from Mardi, but I would also like Catherine or Michael to comment on this, because I did not see this in the list of issues raised by young people. So Mardi, how rampant is the disinformation this election? Is this a major problem for the opposition? And what are the voters doing to combat fake news or disinformation?
Could you repeat the first part again?
How rampant is the disinformation this election?
Yes, we are the victim of misinformation. So, for example, last week we have a friend, a family friend, came from France to visit his family, and because he and I are friends, I took him around to have coffee, to have dinner, and then Fresh News accused him of being a spy or someone that Sam Ramsey has appointed to come and direct or contact or direct the Candlelight Party to follow Sam Ramsey's order. And the person had to delete some of the posting that he had lunch with me, with pictures of me and him and all that, because it put his life in danger, and potentially I will be arrested for fake news. And also we have one other officer, party leader, came from Norway, and he was arrested 3 days ago and then now we have other visitors from the US, from France. They have to leave, they have to escape to Thailand recently, as of yesterday and today, because of this supposedly, it's just all fake rumors and misinformation. They are legitimate party activists, candlelight supporters. They are legitimate Cambodians, tourists come to visit their family in Cambodia, but because they happen to support the candlelight party, they participate in rallies, and a group of people provide information about them that are not true, and potentially they can get arrested, and so they have to escape. And it shouldn't be this way, and where the judicial system here is not independent. So, you potentially visitors can be arrested even before anything can, the judicial system can find out what happened. They will arrest them first. And we cannot have association with foreigners. I can't take pictures with, a white person. It's crazy, the amount of fear and the amount of misinformation, and which it can result in being arrested. So it is a major issue, and we don't know how to deal with it, and it's beyond our control, really. We just don't, we can focus only what we can control, which is trying to get votes and then protecting those votes on the election day.
Thank you, Marty. And I think the question came from our very own experience here in the Philippines, where this information can really shape the outcome of the elections. But I just want to know very quickly the thoughts of Michael and Catherine. Did this information come out in any way in your discussions with the young people? Because I noticed that many of the issues, or most of the issues that were mentioned by the young people, pertain more to the gut issues, economic recovery, job security, etc.
So I'll hand over to Catherine in terms of our young researchers and how they responded, our young people responded in the focus group. But I think it's, while we have the platform to talk about it, this information is a global issue at the moment, and Maddy's captured it fantastically in the Cambodian context. But I think this is a wider discussion, not necessarily for the platform of this webinar, but we've seen it play out in the United States, in Brazil, in the United Kingdom, in the Philippines. It's not a specific subject to Cambodia, but it's one we're all experiencing. So it's something very important to engage with and to recognize what is contextual to the local situation and what is a global phenomenon at the moment.
I would just add, in terms of the focus groups themselves, the young Cambodians that participated in the focus groups, they did not really talk about misinformation in the upcoming commune elections. What they did focus on was, as I've kind of mentioned, a lack of information, I think, on the different campaigns and policy issues that the different parties are proposing for the commune elections. So rather than there being misinformation, they were more concerned about kind of, there is not a lot of information on the different, as well as on the different candidates that are running in the different communes, that there's a lack of information on them even within their own local communes. So they didn't really bring up misinformation in the discussion.
Lito, may I add one?
Yes, please, Marty.
Just in response to the lack of information, we had our political platform and political message developed 2 or 3 months ago, which all the political message is focused on the needs of the local people, but we could not distribute it, because if we distribute our platform before it was allowed by the law, for campaigning, which is only 2 weeks before the election day, we could be penalized and potentially dissolve the election list. And that's the reason why we did not communicate our policy to the public. But in the last, but since the campaign period started, we have distributed more than 8 million pamphlets on our political platform, which, as I mentioned, focuses on the need of the people. So it's more, has nothing to do with border issue, has not to do with immigration issues, which always in the past has not to do with corruption, but more if we get elected, what can we do to serve the people, local issues? So that's pretty much all 7 points will be focused on those issues.
Thank you so much, Mardy. I think we still have 2 or 3 more questions that were not addressed in the chat box, but we are coming to the end of this lunch. And I have to say that there is so much to digest from the presentation and from the reactions as well. But as for myself, if I may, I think I have 3 key takeaways from this panel. One is that participating in elections, whether they are free or fair or not, most often than not expands the democratic space. And that in itself can already be considered as an achievement for the democratic forces. Second, political parties, especially those belonging to the political opposition, must spend time and resources to listen to the sentiments of the people and adjust their party platforms accordingly. And then finally, after listening to what Mardy said about the predominance of disinformation, people from our network, the liberals and Democrats, must continue fighting for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, no matter how difficult the situation in our respective countries are. As what Mardy said, doing so could plant the seed of democracy that could bear fruit in the future. So to formally close this report lunch, please allow me to introduce our valued partner who made the publication of this report possible. To deliver the closing remarks from Bangkok, we have the Regional Project Coordinator of the Frederick Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Vanessa Steinmetz. Vanessa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lito. Thank you for having me. Thank you for making the report possible from CALD. And also it's an honor, and I'm very, very happy that we were able to work with the Future Forum about this topic. I think it's a first cooperation between CALD and Future Forum, and I hope there will be more to come. A little bit about the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and why I am here. We work together with CALD since 25 years already. I am here at the regional office, which is based in Bangkok. We do have 7 offices in the region, in Vietnam, also in the Philippines, also in South Korea. Our newest one is in Taiwan. We also did have 1 office in Cambodia, but we had to close it down, I think about 3 years ago. So we know about the shrinking spaces that you all are witnessing. We know about them also firsthand. And so I would also like to thank Mardy Sang, especially for your very insightful remarks today. It was very valuable, beside hearing what the report was pointing out, but also to hear your perspective, to hear about the hopes of the youth in Cambodia, and also hear about how you're fighting to really get those democracy spaces again, and to maybe, open the door maybe for a brighter future, and to end your 5 years of waiting, and hopefully being able to really participate and being able to get something done, basically. And we from FNF and as well as from CALD and from everyone here, I think we wish you really the best of luck. And thank you very much for being here. And thank you for this very great discussion and for a great report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. So we have now come to the end of our report lunch. So on behalf of our partner, Future Forum and Frederick Naumann Foundation for Freedom, please allow me to extend our warmest thanks to everyone who joined us here on Zoom and on Facebook. Again, thank you, and until next time, keep fighting for democracy. Good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.